What's growing on, gardeners? Winter gardens are notoriously slow growing because of the weak sun and the short days of wintertime. So it is critically important that we fertilize our winter gardens properly to maximize their growth. On this video, I'm going to show you the best way to fertilize your winter garden. If you fertilize in this way, your winter garden will take off like a rocket.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and check out my Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom apparel and gear.
The first thing you must understand is that vegetable gardens are not like forests. Forests are sustainable systems. They were here long before humans, and they will be here long after we are gone. They are a vast diversity of species that work in harmony. The tall canopy trees constantly drop their leaves and needles and self-mulch the ground. You have smaller shrubs and bushes that can literally filter nitrogen from the air and fix it into their roots, which breaks down and adds nitrogen to the soil. You have fungal species that create webs so large they classify as the largest species on Earth. Forests are able to supply everything they need to grow and sustain themselves. Vegetable gardens, on the other hand, are not sustainable systems. They are entirely man-made. You're never going to walk through the forest and randomly stumble across a vegetable garden. These man-made systems need us to keep them functioning, and because of that, we have to constantly pay attention to them, and since they constantly take from the soil, we have to put back into the soil what the plants take away. I mean, if you're a gardener and you've ever tried to take a vacation in the spring or summer, you're worried about going away for a week. You're not even confident that your garden can sustain itself for a week without your attention. So because of this unfortunate fact, we have to constantly add nutrients to our garden soil so our plants have things that they can eat and therefore grow. Now, there are many different ways to do this. You can set up elaborate composting and mulch systems and make all the nutrients that your garden needs, but if you work full-time or you live in a suburb, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to set up these systems and make all the compost and mulch that you need organically to feed your garden. So for the vast majority of us, the easiest way and most cost-effective way to add nutrients back to our garden soil is to simply buy fertilizer products. Now, if you watch my channel, you know that I love using granular organic fertilizers like this product right here or something similar. And most of the time, these are highly effective and they contain pretty much everything your plants need to grow and thrive and feed your soil. However, did you know that these products are actually temperature dependent? The temperature can affect how functional and how effective they are. Let me explain. So simply using this product as an example of an organic fertilizer, you can see what the ingredients are. They are poultry manure, seabird guano, fish bone meal, sulfate of potash, crab shell meal, shrimp shell, and soybean meal. So what these companies are mostly doing is they are taking leftover refuse products and byproducts from the meat and fishing industry, and they're taking them, grinding them up, and they're pelletizing them into organic fertilizers, which are then sold and then applied to the soil. And in practice, this is great stuff because they contain incredible amounts of nutrient density. But the problem is these are whole food ingredients. When you sprinkle this down on your soil, you're basically sprinkling down pelletized bone and manure and blood and feathers and other things like that, depending on the different fertilizer brand and type that you're buying. So they're not actually useful the day you put them down. They have to be consumed by the bacteria and the fungi in that soil and then broken down, and then those nutrients leach out into the soil. So the day you apply them, they do nothing. They can take weeks or more to break down in your soil and feed your plants. Here's the problem. The biological activity of your soil is proportional to temperature. When your soil is nice and warm in the spring, summer, and early fall, the bacteria and the fungi are highly active and efficient at processing and breaking down these fertilizers. But in the wintertime, your soil is cold and biological activity is low. So when you place these organic fertilizers down in cold soil, there's not a lot of biological activity, and the decomposition rate slows to a crawl, and they're going to be very ineffective at feeding your plants if you have cold soil. Luckily, there is a solution to the problem: water-soluble fertilizers. These fertilizers, like the name indicates, are mixed into water, either inside a watering can or injected inside a drip irrigation system, and they have already been broken down, either by natural means or by human means, into the raw nutrients that your plants need. So when you apply these to the root area of your plants, you don't need the soil to break them down for you. That has already been done for you. So your plants can immediately uptake them. And that takes the whole temperature problem out of the equation. These fertilizers will work just as well in the winter as they do in the summer. There are two types of water-soluble fertilizers: your organic water-soluble fertilizers and your synthesized water-soluble fertilizers. Your organic fertilizers are made from whole food products that have already been pre-digested in some means, so when you place them on the plants, they can immediately uptake them. And the nice thing about the organic fertilizers is, since they're made out of whole foods, they contain basically every micronutrient on Earth, and they also feed your soil because you're putting animal and plant parts into the soil that the soil can then eat and use to sustain itself. So this is why organic fertilizers tend to be more expensive. They use better things that are more expensive to make, and they have a longer lasting effect on your soil. Your synthesized fertilizers are made often from things like urea, natural gas, sulfate of potash, things like that. And while they are not harmful by any means, as long as you use them as directed and don't abuse them, they're not giving any lasting benefit to the soil. They will feed your plants, but the only nutrients they're going to get is what the people at the processing facility specifically put into them. So if this is all you give your plants, it is possible they could develop micronutrient imbalances over time. So the best way to make sure that never happens is to be sure that you're using some amount of organics in your fertilizing blend, and also amending with compost and mulch all the time. You can't just rely on some factory somewhere to give your plants all the nutrients they need. When buying fertilizer, all the containers are going to have 3 numbers separated by 2 dashes on them. That is the NPK ratio. N stands for nitrogen on the periodic table, P stands for phosphorus on the periodic table, and K stands for potassium on the periodic table of elements. Nitrogen is largely responsible for your leafy green growth. Phosphorus is largely responsible for the development of roots and flowers and fruits, and potassium is largely responsible for the overall metabolic health of the plant. So depending on what you're growing, they may or may not need different ratios of N, P, and K. One of the conveniences of winter gardening is that we're usually just growing leafy greens because they are cold hardy for the most part. Your flowering and fruiting species, like your tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, eggplants, well, they are your summertime crops that are frost sensitive. It requires more solar energy to make those flowers and fruits. In the winter, pretty much everything I'm growing are leafy greens, like your brassicas, your alliums, your lettuces, things like that. So because we are growing predominantly leafy greens, they generally speaking have a high requirement for nitrogen, N, and they don't have a very high requirement for phosphorus and potassium because they aren't flowering and fruiting crops. So because almost everything I'm growing this time of year is a leafy green, I'm able to fertilize my entire winter garden exclusively using only 2 products. The all-purpose organic fertilizers that are granulated, like I said, they're not going to work as efficiently as they do in the spring and summer, but they'll still slowly break down over the course of winter, especially where I live on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. And then I supplement it with this, Alaska Fish Fertilizer, which is an organic water-soluble fertilizer. Now, in the summertime, this on its own is inadequate because it has an NPK ratio of 5:1:1. It's too much nitrogen relative to phosphorus and potassium to grow things like cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers, so I may have to supplement it by pouring a little bit of something like this in there, a 2:15:15, to try and get that NPK ratio balanced. I could put this in at 1/3 of the strength, and that would roughly bring the mixture of these two together roughly in line to a 1:1:1 ratio. or I could supplement it with a little scoop of something like the all-purpose 20-20-20 fertilizer in order to boost those P and K numbers. But like I said, in the winter, because everything I'm growing for the most part is a leafy green, I don't need to do that. I can use almost exclusively fish fertilizer and the granular organics, and I'm going to show you how to do this. This has been so wonderfully effective for me over the years, and it makes my garden grow like crazy. So for ease of handling, I move the granulated organic fertilizer into this little pickle pail I like using. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scoop of the fertilizer, and around the base of each plant, I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of the granular organic fertilizer, just like you see right here. Each plant will probably get somewhere around half a tablespoon to a tablespoon because these are pretty small. If you have larger, more demanding plants, you can step that up to a tablespoon per plant. And we want to apply that in a ring around the plants because remember, the roots actually come out in a ring around the plants. They're not here where the stem is, they're actually out here. Then after that, we're going to take our hand and lightly scratch that into the top ½ inch to an inch of the soil, because remember, the bacteria and fungi in the soil is going to be responsible for breaking down that fertilizer, so we don't want it just sitting on top of the soil. We want it lightly mixed into the top in order to help facilitate the decomposition. But we also don't want to scratch it in so deeply that we start tearing out the roots. So I find that ½ inch to an inch scratched in is enough. Now I'm going to go around to this entire bed and do the exact same thing for every single plant. Now that our granular organic fertilizer has been applied to our garden, we need to wet it down. Remember, right out of the bag, they are inert. They have to be decomposed, and they're not going to break down if they stay dry. So we always put in our organic granular fertilizers first, then we wet it down to help facilitate decomposition. And in order to wet it down, we're going to wet it down with an organic water-soluble fertilizer, in this case, fish fertilizer. Now, under normal circumstances, like I said, if we were growing a heavily flowering and blooming summer garden, we may need more than just this fertilizer, but because we're growing all leafy greens, the fish fertilizer is more than enough paired with the slow decay of the granular organic fertilizers. Now these are 1.5 gallon watering cans, and we apply this at a rate of 2 to 3 tablespoons per gallon, so we're going to add more like 4 tablespoons since these are 1.5 gallon watering cans. We'll just eyeball it, something like a 1/4 cup, give or take. Now in my case, I think this is all that I need, but if you needed a more balanced NPK ratio, if you wanted to stay 100% organic, you could balance it out with something like a Miracle Grow organic or some other organic water-soluble powdered fertilizer. You could use something like Jack's 20-20-20. If you added a tablespoon per gallon rate of that, it would bring the ratio from 5-1-1 to 25-21-21. If you added a 1/3 dose of this Fruit and Bloom booster, it would take the 5-1-1 to a 6-6-6 roughly. So what we're going to do is we are then going to take these over to my rain barrels. We are going to fill them up. We are going to mix them very, very well to make sure that the water-soluble fertilizer is well incorporated. Then we will water our plants. If you were using a synthesized fertilizer to irrigate your plants right here, you would want to make sure to carefully read the package and see if it is suitable for a foliar application. Many of them are not, and if you get them on the leaves of the plant, they could burn the plant. So if it doesn't say it's appropriate for foliar use, you'd want to target the fertilizer strictly around the root areas of the plants and try not to soak down the plants themselves all that much. Now, because I'm using strictly fish fertilizer, this will not burn the plants. So I will actually water and get that fertilizer all over the leaves and target the root area, because this also makes a great foliar feed. That is another wonderful benefit of using a purely organic fish fertilizer like I am here. Soak down the whole plants and the root areas. And that right there is how you can fertilize your winter garden so it explodes with growth and takes off like a rocket. I've been fertilizing my garden like this every winter, and I've been incredibly successful doing so. Now, that being said, some of you may be saying, this was a long video just to tell me to use fish fertilizer and a granular organic fertilizer. Well, I don't believe in just giving a man a fish. I believe in teaching a man how to fish so he can feed himself for the rest of his life. I don't want to tell you just how to do something, because if all I tell you is how, you'll have to come back every single year to this video not really understanding why you're doing what you're doing. The why is the most important thing. So if you made it all the way through this video, hopefully you now understand that fertilizer and its potency and rate of decay is actually proportional to temperature. That way you don't use the wrong fertilizers at the wrong time of the year, and you understand that because these products can be expensive, and I want you to save your hard-earned money and use things as efficiently and effectively as possible. So that being said, if you did find this video helpful, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. For all of the products that I featured in this video, I will place direct links for them down in the video description for your convenience, and everything else I use in my garden in real life is linked down in the video description in my Amazon storefront link. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Well, it's Christmas morning, and Dale picked up right where he left off last year. Dale, go get another present. Get another one. Bring it on your bed. Oh, very good. Oh, Dale is a master at opening presents. The most efficient present unwrapper ever. Except he's also opening the secondary package. Dale, you're just supposed to take the wrapping paper off. You're not supposed to... Ah! Dale, let go, let go.
Come on. Here.
Dale, you're not supposed to... Oh, well, okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Excitement.
They're yogurt bars.
Well, Dale is begging for his Christmas presents. Look at all of those treats. Mom went overboard again.
Hey, some of those are from Dad, too.
Yeah, this one's from Dad. This one's from Dad. Everything else is from Mom.
He got a lot of toys this year.
And on Dale's bed are all his new toys, which he will quickly destroy, except for these footballs. They usually last pretty long.